Hey guys, we are going to create our Automata assembly today. We're going to assemble the box. So I'm hoping that you've already got your box assembled like this. If not, you can head over to the Google Classroom, and the very first video under the Automata project is how to build and assemble your box. So do that. Also, before we move any further in this assembly, you want to make sure that at least one of the parts, one of the walls, the top plate or the bottom plate, one of it is needing to be fixed, all right, meaning that it is cemented in place. You do that by right-clicking on one of your parts and choosing this option here that says fix. That means that you can no longer grab by clicking and dragging. You can't move that box, okay? Now, I can still click with my mouse wheel and move the entire screen, but I can't move just the box. It's fixed in place. All right, let's start by inserting some parts. We're going to create our axle assembly first, so I'm going to insert both of my axle bushings, both my left and my right. Then I'm going to bring in my axle rod, and last but not least, I'm going to bring in my hand crank. And notice I'm orienting them in the way that I want to put them together, just to make it a little easier. All right, so we're going to grab our fastened mate. So choose fastened mate. So right now you should have fastened 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this one should be fastened 5. All right, I'm going to spin around so I can look at the left end of my axle. And I'm going to put my joint origin right in the center. All right, so I'm going to click that, zoom out, spin around so that I can see inside of my left axle bushing. All right, so right now, my joint origin is on this edge right here, and I want to make sure that it is in the back, okay? So do whatever you have to do to make sure that you can grab the back of that hole and put the joint origin right in the center. When you click, it'll stick that axle in there. Green check right here, and it automatically goes to fasten 6. And we're already in position for what we need for fasten 6. We need this end, the right end of our axle. And we want to click right dead in the center. All right, so click that, and oh, it didn't select. All right, click it, it'll gray out, and then we want to stay in this view. And I'm going to zoom in on my right axle bushing. All right, so what I want is I want my axle to go through this part all the way and end up flush with this face right here. Okay, so the way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to hover over this side right here and make sure that my joint origin ends up, all right, there it goes. That's where I want it, right there. Okay, so get it on the face, in the center, click, and you'll be able to see that your axle is going through. Now, don't worry about the fact that it did not bring this down with it. When we hit the green checkbox, it will. Okay, but here's the thing. I don't need my axle to stop at the end of this. I actually need it to protrude just a little bit because I need to be able to add my handle to it. So we're going to choose offset, okay? And we're going to offset it in the Z direction, and we're going to do 0.3, and we need to know negative or positive. Well, the blue line for my Z axis is pointing to the right, which is the direction that I want my axle to move. And whichever direction that line is pointing, that is the positive direction. So it's going to be a positive 0.3. And when I do, it's going to extend that axle on through, and I can click the green checkbox. And when I do, it brings the other part down with it. All right, now we need to add our handle. So we're already in fastened 7. All right, so every time we finish and hit that green check over here, it automatically adds another mate. So we're already in fasten 7. So I'm going to zoom in here, grab the end of my axle again, zoom back out, and spin around so I can see my handle. And just like we did with the axle rod or the axle bushing, we want to make sure that we are grabbing not the outside but the inside of our hole. Okay, so you want to make sure you've got that back corner and that you're dead in the center. Click that button. And when I click the green checkbox, it puts it all together. I click the front of my view cube, and now I can see my axle bushing. And what I want you to notice is right here, there should be a little bit of a gap between your handle and your axle bushing so that you can see that axle, okay? That's how you know that you've got clearance between the handle and the box. All right, the last thing we need to do is we need to come over here and where it says fastened 8, we need to change this to a revolute mate. All right, because we do want this to revolve, and we're going to come to our axle bushing on the left, zoom in, and we want to grab the outside face of the small circle, okay? Dead in the center, that's what we want. So we're going to click it to select it, and then we're going to slide up to our box, and we want the center of this hole, but we want it to be flush with the face of this left side. So we're going to make sure it's in the center. We're going to be on the face. We're going to click. It's going to put that bushing where we want it. We're going to double check just by spinning it around. Click this green checkbox, and there comes our axle. All right, so now we can right click. Well, we can close out Revolute 2. We do not need it. Right click on Revolute 1, choose Animate, and it's on Reciprocate, which means it's going to go back and forth. I'm just going to do Loop. Click Play, and it should start spinning. And you should be able to rotate this to see that everything is spinning just the way we want it. All right, good enough. Zoom back out. I'm going to pull this over here out of the way a little bit, and it's time to start adding in our followers. So we're basically going to add in all the additional parts, but I'm going to do it in a specific way. All right, I'm going to bring in my followers, and I'm going to put them above my box because I know that they're going in the top of my box. So I'm just going to orient them that way. My follower rod, I know I'm going to need 2 of them, so I'm going to set them over here. I know that, whoops, that one didn't, I want it up here. All right, we also need our rollers, so we're going to need 2 rollers. So I'm going to put a roller underneath each one of these followers. And last but not least, we're going to need 2 pair cams, and I'm going to bring them over here by my box. All right, so with that being said, we have all of our parts for our automata now. All we need to do is put it together. So I'm going to green check that to keep all my parts, and I'm going to zoom in. So I'm going to start with these 2 follower guides, inserting them into the holes up here. So grab your mate tool. It's going to be a fastened mate. I'm going to spin around so I'm looking at the bottom, and that's where I want my origin, right there in the center on that bottom face. I'm going to click that. Didn't take, so I'm going to click it again. There it goes. All right, zoom out, and I'm going to slide over and zoom in, and that's what I want. I want to make sure that I am on the edge of this circle right here. There we go. All right, so notice you've got 3 points in this cylinder that you can choose. That's going to make it flush with the top of the box, the center of that lid, and the bottom, and we want the bottom. So we click that. There we go. That's what we want. Green check. Zoom out. Do the exact same thing with this one. And again, if at any point during this video I'm going too fast, hit that pause button and pause it, rewind it, do whatever you have to do. All right, grab this one here on the edge as well, and you're done with your follower guides. They are in place. All right, so now we can start working on our followers. And we're going to stay in a fastened mate. So right now you should have fastened 1 through 7, and then revolute 1, and then fastened 8, 9. This is going to be fastened 10. So I'm going to zoom in on the bottom of this roller right here, making sure that I am in the center. Zoom out, and I'm going to spin around so I can see the roller. And again, I don't want the surface. I want to make sure that I am down in the bottom of that cylinder. So I'm going to move around until I can see that the bottom diameter of my cylinder is selected. Joint origin is in the center. Click it. Green check. And come back out. And I'm going to use my view cube to my advantage just to keep rotating around. All right, so I'm going to zoom in on the other one. And it's basically do the exact same thing you just did one more time. So wash, rinse, repeat. Here comes an announcement over the intercom.
Good morning, teachers and staff. This is your friendly reminder. If you have not already done so, please take a second to go ahead and clock in for me.
All right. So now we've got our rollers attached to our followers. It's time to put them into our follower guides. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to change this from a fastened mate, instead of fastened 12, it is going to become slider 1. So over here in our menu, you'll have fastened 1 through 7, revolute 1, fastened 8 through 11, and then you should have slider 1. All right, so I'm going to zoom in on this follower and I'm going to rotate around. And what I want to do is I want to select the top of my roller, okay, the top of my roller, and I want my joint origin to be in the center of that hole, just like always. All right, so top of my roller, I'm going to click, and I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to rotate up so I can see the bottom of my follower guide. And I just want to choose the face of this follower guide, making sure that the joint origin is centered. And when I do, it's going to sandwich that roller to the bottom of my follower guide, and that's what I want. So we're going to green check that. I'm going to click the front of my view cube again, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. It's already put me into another slider mate, so I'm going to zoom in here, grab the top of this roller, and I'm going to zoom out, rotate around, zoom in on my other follower guide, and do the exact same orientation. All right, click that green check box, and then I'm going to X out slider 3 and go back to my front view. All right, so what we've got now is our followers are in place and we are ready to go. Now we can test our slider mate. All right, so I just grab this roller right here, click and hold, and I can drag, and what you will see is it does slide up and down. If I try to go side to side, nothing happens, okay? Only up and only down. All right, so I'm going to hit undo. It's going to go back into normal position. Now the problem is I do not want that follower to be able to go through the bottom of my box, and I don't want it to be able to go through the top. So I want to tell it how far it can go. So we're going to set some limits. So double click on slider 1 and choose limits. All right, maximum. Maximum is the height that it can go. And right here, this is 0 because it's the height that we set it to. So we're going to set this to 0. And we're going to set this, since we can see our z-axis is going up. All right, we want to make sure that our minimum goes down, and it should be a negative 1.5. All right, so how do we test that? Well, hit this play button right here, and it will show you that it can go up to 0 and down to negative 1.5. Another way to test that is to come over here and just grab it, and we should be able to drag. It stops at the axle, and it will not go any higher than the top of the box. So that's what we want. Negative 1.5 minimum, 0 for maximum, green check. Do the same thing for slider 2, same measurements. Negative 1.5 for the minimum and 0 for the maximum. And you can click that play button again just to double check, and it'll show you that you did it correctly. All right. So now the last thing we need to do is we need to add our cams. All right, so before we add our cams, I'm going to come up here, and you want to find the axle bushing, this one on the left, and you want to make it invisible. Okay, so click that little eyeball next to it to make it invisible so that you can see the end of your axle, and I'll show you why. All right, so we're going to grab our mate tool, and we're going to do a fastened mate. I'm going to roll around till I can see the side of my pair cam, and I want that joint origin to be on this face in the center of that hole, and I'm going to click. All right, now I'm going to come up here and I'm going to show you, we want to make sure that you are selecting your axle, okay? So right now it looks like I'm selecting that axle, but in reality I'm selecting the face of this wall, okay? If I spin around, you can see there is a space between that joint origin and my axle, okay? So the way that you know that you're on the axle is you want to zoom in until you get that little yellow box all the way around the outline, the perimeter of your axle. Okay, that's how you know you're selecting the axle. Click that. It's going to bring your pair cam over. And then click the front of your view cube and double check. You should have your pair cam should be in the wall with just a little bit protruding right here. That's what we want. Okay, but we don't want it to stay there, obviously. So we're going to set an offset. Okay, so we're going to choose offset, and we're going to move it along the z-axis, and we want it to go to the right. We want it to end up over here somewhere. We can see that our z-axis is pointing to the left, which means left is positive. So if we're moving it to the right, it's going to be negative. So let's move this a negative 1.5. And that's under my roller, but it's not really centered. So let's try negative 1.4. Again, that's almost centered, but not quite. So negative 1.45 will split the difference. And that's pretty much centered. So negative 1.45 is going to be our Z offset for our first pair cam. Green check that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to right click on Revolute 1 and animate. And I'm going to click play. And I want to make sure that my pair cam is rotating with my axle. If it is not, if the axle and bushing and everything are rotating, but your pair cam is not rotating, that means that you accidentally selected the outside wall and not the axle. That pair cam has to be mated to that axle in order for it to spin. All right, we're going to do the same thing. So grab another mate tool. This should be fasten 13. And we are going to do the same thing with this pair cam that we did with the last one. Make sure that joint origin is on the face and on the center of that circle, or the center of that axle hole. All right, zoom in on your axle, and again, make sure you're getting the face of that axle and not the face of the wall. Click that. Zoom out, go around to your front view, double check that you can see that little sliver. If not, adjust it. And let's set our offset. So this time, if this was 1.45, let's make this one over here, let's make it negative 3. And we're almost there. And let's try negative 3.25. Ooh, that is pretty close, but I'm going to go negative 3.2. And I'm going to call that done. Negative 3.2. And that centers up this axis, or this axle right here. Now, the last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to click this button right here, rotate second, or reorient secondary axis. And what I'm going to do is when I click this, it's going to rotate that pair cam for me, and that's what I want. Okay, I want that to be opposite of my other one so that we get good motion and we're able to see that difference. So I'm going to click the green check box right here, and it's going to close that out. And I've got fastened 1 through 7, Revolute 1, fastened 8 through 11, sliders 1 and 2, fastened 12 and 13. And just to be sure that everything is operating correctly, I'm going to animate it one more time by right-clicking Revolute 1 and choosing animate and then clicking play. And as you can see, both of my cams are rotating along with my axle and my handle. That's what I want. So I'm going to close this, and I'm going to make my axle bushing visible again. All right, the last thing we need to do is we need to tell our followers to follow our pair cams. So here's how we're going to do this. Click your front view, zoom in a little bit, and for this mate, you're actually going to have to click the button because it's not in the mate tools. It is this one right here, the tangent mate. So we click on this, and we get tangent 1. And you are going to click on the top of your pair cam and the bottom of your roller. And when you do, it's going to drop that roller down and connect it to your pair cam. We can green check that, and then I am going to right click on Revolute 1 and double check that it will animate. All right. If you click animate and it rolls around like this, you're good to go. All right. If, on the other hand, it gives you an error, then open up your tangent mate. If you get an error, what you'll need to do is you'll need to open up your tangent mate, and you can X out of both of these and do it in reverse order. Try going roller to pair cam instead of pair cam to roller if you get an error. If you don't get an error, you're good to go, and we go on and do the same thing, tangent mate, and we do the exact same thing with this pair cam, follower, or pair cam and roller, green check. I'm going to throw this into an isometric mode so I can see everything. Right click on Revolute 1, choose animate, tell it to loop, click play. Oh, there we go. All right, so there's that crazy error message that I was telling you that you might get. All right, so we'll do this again. All right, so for this one, we'll undo these two, and we'll do the roller and then the top of the pair cam. We'll try that. Okay, and we'll do a revolute 1. Animate, and click it. And this time it works. Oh, no, it didn't. No, it didn't. All right, let's try this one more time. This is interesting. I'm going to delete tangent 2, and I'm going to move my follower back up, and we're going to try this again. So sometimes it gets a little picky in how you do things. Okay, so I'm going to grab that and that just like before, and I'm going to right click Revolute 1, animate, and let's see what happens this time. So far so good. There we go. All right, so if you get that error message, stop, back up, and redo it. Try it a different way. Okay. Another thing that might happen if you try it both ways and it still will not work, then what you can do is you can come back up to this one. This one was PairCam 2. You just gotta scroll through here until you find where you connected your pair cam, which should be fasten 12 and fasten 13. So one of the things that we did was we rotated the secondary axis. We reoriented the secondary axis. If you try connecting your roller to the pair cam both ways and it won't work, go back and reorient the secondary axis so that it is facing the same way as this pair cam, then connect your follower and roller, okay? And make sure that they work. Once it's working, then you can come back in here and click this again to reorient it, and it will continue to work. This happened to one of the students on Wednesday. All right, so hopefully this helped you guys, and you should have a working automata at this point. All right, so hopefully these videos were of help. Go ahead and finish this up. Like I said, if I lost you at any point, obviously rewind the video and go back through it. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Now get to thinking about what you're going to do to create your automata and to make it your own. All right. We will see you guys in class.